Hello, and welcome back to the New Books in Indian Religions podcast, a podcast channel here on the New Books Network. I'm your host, Dr. Raj Balkaran. More importantly, I have the pleasure of welcoming to the podcast three guests today. We have Dr. Jeffrey Long, Pankaj Jain, and Madhu Khanna. They all are editors to a series as part of the Encyclopedia of Indian Religions called Hinduism and Tribal Religions, which we'll dive into today. Welcome all to the podcast.
Thank you, Raj, for doing this.
Thank you very much.
So this work, we typically feature monographs. We of course feature collected volumes, but this sort of work is a work on a very different scale. And as you're all seasoned scholars and seasoned authors, you surely appreciate the extent to which this particular enterprise differs from many an academic enterprise. So maybe one of you can comment upon what is it that's required of you? What are you producing here?
I can go on this.
Yes.
So, Professor Arvind Sharma started this project, I think, and then there was several parts of this entire project. So, Professor Jeffrey Long, who is also in this podcast, he did the Buddhism and Jainism part of it, and then Professor Rita Sharma joined the team, and she invited me to take it forward, the Hinduism part of it. And I think Professor Madhu Khanna also on the podcast here right now, she took care of the tribal religions part of it. Then once I started working, I was looking for a helping hand. And for as always, I found Professor Jeffrey Long, who stepped in, and we finally could accomplish this massive project. That's the short story, and I think my colleagues can add to it.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that, to what Pankaj has just said. I was invited initially by Dr. Arvind Sharma, who was really the person behind the whole project, the Encyclopedia of Indian Religions, published by Springer. And he approached me about contributing as a co-editor to the Buddhism and Jainism volumes. My co-editor on that was Professor K.T.S. Sarao. And so the way we divided the labor is he took care of Buddhism, I took care of Jainism. And so we were given an extensive list of topics by Dr. Sharma, and then tried to find experts on those various areas who would be willing to write short pieces, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer. We had sort of a three-tiered system. So some of the essays were quite extensive, some were of, I would say, medium length, and then you have your very brief, sort of paragraph length entries. So what is arati, something like that, something very, straightforward. And so then the bulk of the work for us as editors was getting hold of people who would be willing to write, and that was a bit of a challenge because everyone's very busy. And we found that the people who were most eager and willing to contribute were junior scholars and graduate students, because they are very keen at that stage to publish something, right, to have their name associated with something. So we did manage to, and I've got a sort of a small army of up and coming Jain scholars to write the Jain sections. And so then for these two volumes, the Hinduism and Tribal Religions volumes, Pankaj Pai and I believe Rita Sharma also had already been involved at earlier stages as editors, but it was the Hindu tradition, that's a vast undertaking. There's so many terms, so many things that need to be defined and explained. So again, the task of finding people, that was a large part of it. And then at the stage that I entered the project, it also became a question of following up with people, people who had committed to write, and then we had not heard from them for some time. So contacting them, please, submit your article. And then because I came in relatively late, I was also involved in just kind of the final look of the whole thing, arranging the articles and little bit of editing. I mean, the articles that people had written were very good, but because dozens of people have contributed to this, you need to go through it and make sure that there's a commonality of tone, and so that it has a certain cohesion. So that was more of my job at the in this particular project.
Sounds like a fascinating enterprise. With a lot of coordination involved, obviously. Want to give us a sense of the scale, perhaps the number of entries, perhaps how long the entries are, perhaps this volume as a whole, like how many such volumes are there? Um, and in no particular order, maybe let's talk about who's this for? I mean, who's this resource for?
Khanna, you would
Okay.
like to?
So I could say a little about
Oh,
that too. So in terms of who it's for, I find reference works like this are useful at a variety of stages of a scholar's career. So someone who is beginning, someone, a graduate student, um, would find this very useful as a reference work. But very senior scholars too, we come across things that are, if we're doing a large project, we're not equally expert in everything. So there may be some topic that we're just not as familiar with. So just to get some familiarity, or if unfamiliar terms come up, reference works like this are useful.
yeah,
No,
and I
I
just
also
sorry, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
no, I also think that an encyclopedia of this quality is authentic. And now, there's so much of popular literature on Hinduism and other subjects, that people want authentic sort of references. And I think that's an important element of this particular encyclopedia because it's updated. It's taken on themes which you don't find in other encyclopedias, like modern religions, etc. Radha Swami, for instance, cult. I mean, where do you find information on them? Things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and to
think
add to the information, I just checked the list of topics, and we covered more than 700 topics in this Encyclopedia of Hinduism and Tribal Religions. Hundreds of scholars contributed, and like Professor Long and Professor Khanna indicated, the major challenge was to find available and competent and authentic academic scholars to write on these various hundreds and hundreds of topics. So that's so in Hinduism, in the Hinduism section for this encyclopedia, the list was prepared like Dr. Long indicated by Dr. Rita Sharma gave me the list. Then my job was to find the authors and then we continue. Yes. All right.
In my case, there were no lists
Oh,
because it was a new subject, number
oh,
one. And number two, because
please tell them the subject.
we have 360 tribal groups which have been recognized by the Indian government and by the constitution. And they are spread all over India, in different parts of India, from east to west, north to south. And then, we have their population runs as much as 10 million, which is a huge amount, huge amount of people. 32 tribal groups just in Jharkhand. So, it was kind of, I had to sort out my mind. I had to read everything that's available on tribals, meet people. I had done some research on Santals many years ago. And I'd lived with the Santal tribe for about 2 weeks. I wrote an article about it. As a matter of fact, it was published in one of Professor Sharma's anthologies. So I think that's why he chose me to write on tribal religions. And the second thing was that, reams and reams have been written on tribal India in the post-independent era. But it's all on development and what a miserable state they are in, or what are the chances open for them to modernize. But at the end of it, despite it was daunting for me to kind of, this journey was quite daunting in the beginning. But at the end of it, I realized I learned so much, meeting scholars. And then slowly I identified some remarkable scholars in India who've done fantastic work, on tribal religion. And I was able to sort of bring them together. And we have some articles which are quite unusual, like Archaeology of Tribal Religion by Dr. K.K. Chakrabarti, which I think is a brilliant, brilliant piece, a very long piece. Sanskritization, Ram Katha, what the tribals, how do they conceive their Ram Katha, It's an inversion of the classical story. So things like that were very interesting.
Madhuji, you mentioned a number of 10 million, roughly
Yes.
tribal peoples. As a scholar of Jainism, I'm struck by that because that's twice the number of Jains in the world.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, but these
So,
people are marginalized. They're living in, in the forests or by the river.
yes,
They're sort of different communities, jungle communities, literally, by the water bodies, by the rivers, or in the forests, or in the mountains, and in beautiful landscapes, which are still preserved in some areas. So in that sense, I think we have a lot to learn from them. So one of the lessons I learned that, there is a huge tradition of Adi Dharma, which is coming up in Jharkhand.
Mhm.
And it is totally nature-centered. They don't believe in mullahs, they don't believe in priests, they don't believe in pandits, they don't believe in any form of sacred site like a temple or a mosque or anything like that. They believe that the mountains and trees and rivers should be worshipped. And they're
Mhm.
trying to bring together all the tribals together, despite their origins. So, which I thought it was fantastic. It's a kind of a new religion which is coming up. Religion,
And
primal religion.
a lot of ecological wisdom in that, I'm sure.
A lot of and of course, Pavan has worked so extensively on
Yes.
ecology of communities. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, today when we are going through the Anthropocene epoch, where we have ruined, we polluted air and water bodies and, our forests and human impact of materialism, consumerism, corporate greed, which has changed the Earth's morphology and chemistry and biology. I think
Yes,
we need to look at these cultures very seriously.
yes.
And that's what I learned. And,
Mhm.
and another impact was that, my students at Jamia, because we were teaching a course in tribal religions, and they found the encyclopedia to be very interesting
Very good.
because what I tried to do was, to bring in entries on north, south, east, and west. I mean, it was not possible for me to cover everybody. We didn't find the scholars who could write about religion. We tried our best, and I think we've done as much as I could.
Very good. Very good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm encouraged by Madhuji, by what you're saying about how this material is being received and the importance of it. I was taken to task by someone on Facebook when our volumes were published. I took a photo of when my books arrived in the post. I took a photo, posted it, and wrote a little congratulatory note. That for Rita and Pankaj and yourself, and that we did it, and this was many
Yeah,
years
yeah.
and so on. And there was a interesting reaction. Most people were just like, yay, congratulations. But the distinction between Hinduism and tribal religions upset some folks. And I'm sure you're very aware of this
Yes, yes,
ideological
Sanskritization and
territory.
yeah, of
Yeah.
course. But there's a very good article on Sanskritization
Hmm.
by a historian, very well-known historian who teaches in Delhi University. That's
Hmm.
there, and then Adi Dharmas is the opposite. So both are there. It's not as
Yes,
though.
yes. I was trying to explain some of the nuances of this, and this person who was very agitated took a screenshot of our conversation, marked some things, in red and underlined and so on, and created his own post about, and you'll find this part especially ironic given all the work that you did on this, Madhuji.
Mhm.
Look at what these Western scholars are doing, so
I've said,
yeah,
you've
yeah,
said that an Eastern scholar has put it
exactly,
together.
exactly. I didn't engage for it. I didn't think it was
No,
going
but
to
it
be
may have been
a
political. I don't know. Was
it
it
was
political?
totally political. Yeah, it was totally political.
Ah,
Yeah,
so then.
yeah. I
Yeah, but
didn't.
now it won't happen. We have a president who comes from Jharkhand, who's a
Mhm.
tribal.
That's right. That's right.
That's it.
So,
And I think that's fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, that is something, it's something to be very proud about. I was so proud. I thought I'll give her these volumes
Yeah.
and
Oh,
tell
wonderful.
her, look, let's do something on Jharkhand because it has got 32
Mm.
tribes. And
Yes.
I have a PhD student who did her PhD with me on Shantals in Jharkhand. She is from Shantal tribe. And
Wow.
it is amazing. Her interpretations of her tribe was so distinctive.
Yes.
And there was so much in, sort of totally in line with the old culture.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we should go ahead with a small volume on Jharkhand tribes. 32, the oldest tribe, Asurs, come from Jharkhand. And they're still there. I've seen their hutments and, I've been to their sites. Jharkhand is a very beautiful state, untouched still.
Well, certainly you've produced an important, timely, perhaps even comprehensive resource on available knowledge on tribal religions, and also with respect to what we think of as more traditional Hinduism. Give us a sense of just some of the titles or some of the scope of the entries. What sorts of things might folks learn about through this encyclopedia?
Yeah, I have this list open in front of me. Like I said, 700 topics.
So rather than systematically rattling them out, perhaps prioritize by what sparks joy in you, Pankaj.
Topic like mathematics and Hinduism, right? I'm intrigued. What a good combination, right? A good mix of diverse topics. Durga to Auroville to Ravi Shankar to Chakra to mathematics to Shivaji, of course, homosexuality, right? All kinds of Prarthana Samaj, all kinds of Greeks. All these are diverse topics I'm looking at.
So it's fair to say that in fine encyclopedic style, that this is a comprehensive enterprise that is also occurring at a high caliber, which I think is really the value is that just about any topic related to the Indic world.
BHP, BJP, we
right.
didn't
So,
do anything.
So I think the value here is we can look up just about any topic. And what was mentioned earlier is important because certainly trends in scholarship wax and wane, and we can quibble until the cows come home. Maybe that's an apt expression, particularly in the Indic context. But nevertheless, there is a difference between scholarly enterprise and opinion pieces or politically motivated rhetoric, et cetera, et cetera. And you'd be surprised. I mean, I quite enjoy teaching. And I do have a number of undergraduate contracts here and there, but the vast majority of my teaching is continuing studies, adult education. And you would be surprised at the droves of individuals in the world who pay good money to. I'm teaching a Sanskrit course for the summer. Adult learners paying good money to learn Sanskrit over the summer, and folks more and more in the online learning scene, they really are trying to separate the wheat from the chaff, and they're looking for solid scholarship. They're looking for knowledge they can rely on. So this is extremely important, actually.
You have all the latest books which are referenced, which itself is so fantastic, I think, about the encyclopedia. And also all the new wave ideas, like mathematics and, and science and religion and all that. I think it's fascinating.
And
I've tried to kind of look at Adi Dharma in terms of ecology, and there's, I have sort of made that statement. It's a very important cult.
Yeah.
One can tend to miss it. Yeah.
I believe we all have contributed articles also, in addition to the editorial work. I know when Rita was still in charge, she asked me to write the article on Sri Ramakrishna, which I did. And then later on, I think I wrote the piece on theism and deities. And of course, there's that whole complicated monotheism, polytheism, pantheism, panentheism set of questions. I wrote to some of those.
Wrote on Vivekananda also.
So
Vivekananda also, yes.
Yeah, I also.
Yeah, all the faith leaders, I think that's an interesting sort of element of this. The newer faith leaders, you have Osho and you have,
Yeah, we have Osho also.
Yeah, you have Osho.
Environmentalism. I wrote on environmentalism.
Yeah.
And current movement, like Madhuji, you mentioned Radhaswamy, Swami Narayan is there.
No, but this is so interesting because you have nothing on Radhaswamy. And they have, they have the largest number of properties in India, all over India. And when you ask them, what do you believe in, you don't know where to look. Because I don't think Encyclopedia Britannica has anything on them or anything like that. So here is a new encyclopedia, which is updated. You see, we've got to update these things. And I think that's where See, my first entry on Yantra was in Macmillan's Encyclopedia of Religion when I was a student. That was in 80, 283 or something like that. And things have gone ahead in religious studies also. Like bioethics. And also this one entry, which was so fascinating, was the indigenous Ram Katha.
Yes.
Nobody had done research on it earlier. But within these 20 years, through IGNCA and, Kapilaji's efforts, they have a department on oral cultures. And some of the students there and scholars began to work on that. And they've collected a whole lot of oral mythologies from tribal and village India. And so that became a basis. I mean, I have given a huge article on that. I mean, one scholar wrote on Ram Katha, which is fascinating because they inverse all the classical values, to their advantage. So it's good to see how India thinks. It's not only the classical mainstream, but also the substream and the parallel cultures that India has.
Part of what
I thought the volume on Buddhism and Jainism were fascinating. Even as a scholar, I learned a lot because many things you don't know,
I was very pleased with how those came out. Thank you for it.
Yeah, it was, and I've recommended it to many students that you must look up the encyclopedia. And when you compare this encyclopedia with other, encyclopedias in India, very local, which are very locally produced, then, I mean, this is something else.
Right.
So from that point of view, I'm very happy to be part of it. Thank Arvindji.
Yes.
For literally.
Lucky to be part of it.
Karna hai tumhe. You have to do it. You wrote that article on tribal India. You have to. I said, okay, I'll do it. But it took a long time to put it together,
Yes.
As Jeff said, all the time writing articles, several, sending them feelers after feelers, correcting their material, asking questions, raising questions and all.
So I think our audience has received an insider perspective along the lines of the amount of coordination and collegial collaboration that this sort of enterprise entails. And moreover, I've opted more than usual to be more of a fly on the wall on my own podcast, so as to allow you all to continue your engagement, because what this, it's sort of meta, because the tone of the podcast where you're all commenting on the scope of the work and each other's entries, this actually is emblematic of the ways in which many a scholar may engage the printed work itself. Yes. And everything from armchair Indophiles to grad students to lifelong learners to seasoned scholars will find something in here that will intrigue and surprise and ideally inspire them about Indic thought. So I've actually quite enjoyed doing less managing of the flow than usual because you're all seasoned scholars.
This is the green room of intellectuals. What goes on there in making a book or an article? Ask us.
Yes.
All the tears and laughter and fun.
Yes.
I actually like the way the title was chosen for this particular section of this massive project: Hinduism and tribalism. In my humble opinion, Hinduism is nothing but a global tribal religion. It's like completely organic, completely ecology oriented. There is no one, right? Like we all know, it's so diverse, so massive, so organic.
Plural.
So nice plural. Overlap. There's so much overlap between Hinduism and tribal. So I really like this title. Yeah.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you all for appearing on the podcast today. It was a great pleasure hearing you all speak and getting to know you all a little better. Some of you are frequent flyers and some of you are first-time flyers, but really it is the guests. It is your contributions and your personalities which make the podcast. So thank you all for appearing.
Thank you, Raj, for this opportunity to share our work with the world and with other scholars, colleagues in our field. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jeff. You did a great job. Bye, Pankaj. Yes. Don't disappear.
We'll in touch. My pleasure. For those listening, we have been speaking about this really fascinating, far-reaching, high-caliber publication as part of the Encyclopedia of Indian Religions, in particular, the Hinduism and Tribal Religions volume. Check it out. I'm sure you'll find something of interest to your thought process, your journey, or your research. Until next time, keep listening, keep reading, and keep contemplating what goes in an encyclopedia. Bye for now.
Thank you.